If you just joined us, you are on to Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. And of course, we are looking at local governments and the financial management in Nigeria. And to kickstart this aspect of our program today, let's of course have Oyemi Ajayi give us a backgrounder to the conversation.
The local government is the third tier of government known to be the closest to the people at the grassroots. The statutory function of the local government is as contained in the constitution and includes provision of basic amenities such as markets, primary healthcare facilities and other services to the citizens at the basic level. Local governments derive funds through internally generated revenue, allocations and other investments. However, there is the provision of a state joint local government account, which is maintained by each state government, from which allocations are made to the local government councils of the states, from the federation account, and from the governments of the states. This account is meant to implement the notion of fiscal federalism at the local government level in Nigeria. Over time, the involvement of the state government in the financial management of local governments has been a bone of contention, as the funds hardly reach the local councils. This has given rise to the clamor for financial autonomy of the local government, which will make the local government have direct access to their financial allocation and be at liberty to expend same based on the needs of the people they serve without the interference of the state government. This is because many local governments claim that most funds are denied them by the states, causing delay of implementation of projects or denial of rights to execute programs and projects relevant to the developmental need. Though the efforts to ensure that local governments get full autonomy is still ongoing, the recent issuance of guidelines by the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit, NFIU, requesting all banks to ensure that only local governments withdraw allocations sent to them and following traceable e-banking channels is exciting many. Many see this as an approach that can give some financial independence to the local governments and allow them to be accountable for the use of the funds. This could reduce the high level of corruption and impunity with which these funds have been spent over the years. But what difference will this new initiative make, and how will the political actors respond at the state and local government level? Will this substitute the much sought after local government autonomy? These are some questions that guests on Good Morning Nigeria will be discussing shortly.
All right, thank you very much, Oyemi Ajayi, for that background. We have with us in the studios to discuss this issue in further detail. The chairman of the Abuja Municipal Area Council is Honorable Abdullahi Adamu Candido. Honorable Candido, pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning. Good morning, sir. Also
here with us, another familiar face whenever we're discussing local government issues is Honorable Jibril Sabo Kiana. He's former chairman of Kiana Local Government in Nasarawa State. Honorable Kiana, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
It's my pleasure.
Okay.
All right, gentlemen, you're welcome. We have a good guest. This is a former local government chairman and, of course, the serving council chairman. Well, we are actually looking at local governments and their financial management, but we would like to have a background in here that has to perhaps look at the foundation of local government in Nigeria, because some analysts will say that there are inherent weaknesses in the constitutional foundation of local government, and of course contradictions created by local government reforms we have had over the years, which have now boxed local government into a corner where it is now searching for relevance in the system, not to talk of its financial management. Honorable Kiana, could you just give us a background to local government and what, of course, is playing out today with respect to its position in this strata of governance?
I am also very pleased that the first shot you are giving us to maybe have a word on is having to do to relieve, give an insight as to what may be responsible for this continuous misunderstanding of the status of local government in the country. Because the history is really replete with a lot of uncoordinated effort by various authorities through time that must have led to the situation, or half-hearted decision-making across time. Anybody who is a student of history of local government development in the country can easily understand that since about 1916, when the colonial government set in, and up to about 1960, over 1950 to 1976, are the two major phases where local government system begin to take form. The original, since the enactment of the native authority, the colonial government in Nigeria, there has been no any form, standard form of what a local government authority in respective communities had been. The colonial masters used whatever structure that would suit their process, their channel of communication with the ordinary Nigerians into time. But at about 1950, we started having some definitions being given to whatever may constitute the foundations for local government in Nigeria. In the northern region, you had the native authority arrangements, which was what the colonial masters made, while in the eastern region and the western region, you had government, local government authorities, but with different approach by the respective authorities, as it were. But into about 1976, all this, for over 70 years, there was no definitive structure or status or entity that you could lay your hands that is uniform in Nigeria, that this is a local government. So just like we keep referring to 1976 watershed reform, it was the first time that the local governments would begin to have a generic definition uniformly across the country. And the decision that were contained in the 1976 reform was far-reaching and comprehensive, but only lost momentum at the point of implementation because of the interruptions that came with the 1979 incoming of the civilian government. And unfortunately, when the Obasanjo-Murtala era was ending, the mindset of the incoming civilian government was that maybe the volume of local government, the number of local government in their respective states was going to give them access further more to the national cake than were the late principles of the total number of local governments in Nigeria. So because it was not properly defined, even at the 1970, when the Obasanjo era was winding up, the civilian regime, when they came up, they took advantage of the loophole in the constitution, even then, to create all sorts of volumes of local government in their respective states, and until at about 1984, when General Buhari again came in and stopped the mess. So between 1919 to 1976 and 1976 to 1983, the system has been very fluid and was just open to manipulation by various authorities that came, and there was no stability. So this was what laid the foundation, because if the 1979 Constitution took firm decision as to the status of the local government system in this country, all these other Latin discrepancies wouldn't have arisen in any form. But even in 1984, a major effort was done by the head of state then to give the local government system a firm foundation, because it realized that it was the only way the government at the federal government level can reach out to the ordinary citizens with its own programs. So it set up again the same Dasuki to take a very critical look at this status of the local government in Nigeria, and again came up with very far-reaching decisions that would have also led to the proper takeoff of the local government system in Nigeria. Unfortunately, again, the administration was interrupted, and Buhari and Babangida came in. Babangida came in with his own super liberalism in government and introduced so many wide-ranging inputs. Functional enough, but I think the system was not ready to absorb it. And so when it came with all those opportunities, again, it began to be misunderstood by the operators. That was when actually you could say that there was corruption in local government system, because the system was independent enough to be able to carry out its activities without due disruptions by state governments. Mm-hmm. And then it lost out during the Abuja time, and the reform was interrupted again with the 1979 constitution. So this disruptive, non-continuous status of steady management and law that guided it constitutionally, exposed the local government system all through this era, to manipulations and misinterpretations of how the second tier of government could handle the activities of the local government system in Nigeria. This is the foundation that may have, led us to where we are today.
All right, Honorable Sabo Kiana, thank you very much for that historical account of the local government system in Nigeria. Now, we have two other guests who will be joining in this conversation. Do not forget, we have already introduced the chairman of the Abuja Municipal Area Council, that's Honorable Abdullahi Adamu Candido, who's with us in the Abuja studios. And from our Benin Network Center, we'll be joined by Comrade Olumane Oyibo. Comrade Oyibo, well, you can see him in a bowler hat, which signifies that he's from Delta. He's the chairman of the Local Government Service Commission in Delta State. Comrade Oyibo, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much.
And in the middle of the screen, would like to also welcome Professor Muhammad Kabir Issa. Professor Issa is a professor of governance studies and administration in the Department of Local Government and Development Studies at Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria. Professor Muhammad Issa, pleasure to have you with us on the program as well.
It's my pleasure to be here too. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, now let's return once again to the prompt for this conversation, which has to do with the publicized directive last week by the Financial Intelligence Unit requiring financial institutions to deal with local governments in a certain way, and for local governments to also proceed with the management of their monies in certain ways. Happily, we have with us in the studios the incumbent, who won his re-election, by the way, chairman of the Abuja Municipal Area Council, Honorable Abdullahi Candido. Honorable Candido, what's your understanding of the directive coming from the NFIU?
I think let me start from the vivid account presented by my senior colleague here, the former chairman of Kiana. You see, I will agree with him to a larger extent. The local government administration in this country haven't had a lot of inconsistencies and instability in the process of how the council should even look like. You see, negatively affected what local government is supposed to be. And account of that, the process that even brought us with the present council officials, I think that prompted the National Financial Intelligence Unit to begin to think of how public funds must be monitored, so long as the local government administration must have autonomy. I would actually agree with that position, because not until local councils are properly monitored, even if they have the autonomy, certainly the people may be the worse for it. Simply because, for instance, we have what we call Act 2 in the local councils. Act 2 is simply is a combination of staff, right, that checkmate the excesses of local councils administration in terms of financial involvement, right? Now, if at the upper level, this financial intelligence also have something to do with monitoring, then that signifies the fact that, yes, we can now get it right. Or else, if local councils are just given the autonomy to freely operate, then certainly we have not gotten it right up to now. And therefore, I agree with this fact that the financial intelligence unit must have to put in place serious and deliberate process where local councils must be seen, utilizing resources that is coming their way in the best manner, so that the people are not just shortchanged. That is maybe the position I would like to see it from this angle.
Okay, thank you indeed. Let's return to Benin. I would like to speak to Comrade Olumani Oyibo. You are the chairman of Local Government Service Commission in Delta State. Now, what is your understanding of the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit guidelines released last week? Of course, current serving chairman has just spoken and you've listened. Now, what is your understanding about it? Because we need to, share with you what obtains in Delta State and how Delta State is going to address this new directive, and of what impact is it going to be in terms of running council areas in Delta State.
Thank you very much. Well, I want to appreciate you for the opportunity you are giving to me to be in your studio today. Let me say strictly that the position that has been taken by the government via the financial institution is as a result of the perception which people have about local government. That is that local government as a body, they have not been doing well. They have not been performing. As a result, there is this belief that the funds that are there are not properly utilized, and that corruption is even worse at the local government level. Much as I agree with the government that it's necessary to put some checks and balances and to really control the funds of local government, particularly as it affects the functions and the way the joint local government accounts are operated all over the country. But there is the need to make it clear that the issue of corruption, whatever the situation that is on ground, is not peculiar to local government. I agree that there's the need for financial control, there's monitoring, but at least for now, there are also institutions at various levels in the various states that are saddled with responsibility of monitoring local government finances. For instance, we have the Office of Auditor General of Local Government, we have the Directorate of Local Government or the Ministry that are saddled with these responsibilities. What I'm trying to say is that much as I agree that there's the need to regard control, we should also look at the reasons why there's what I can call some failures at local government level. Because the truth of the matter is that you cannot take what you don't have. The situation we have today in this country is that local government are saddled with some responsibility, which is far beyond their financial strength. Take, for instance, the issue of funding of primary school. There's no amount of monitoring you want to give or you want to take now, that even if you send the money joint local government account, and the fund from the federation account cannot meet up with their responsibility, then there will be problem. So much as we want to agree that this structure that we put in place in order, we should also look at other areas. Area of funding of local government, area of ensuring that local government get enough funds from the federation account, particularly the issue of revenue allocation. That aspect should be looked into, and which will actually take over the function and payment of primary school teachers. If these things are left there, no matter whether the money comes to joint local government account or not, whether there is monitoring at the national level or not, the problems will still be there. So the problem is not just that of corruption alone at local government level, because corruption in this country, it cuts across the three tiers of government. And I want to believe that it's a case of trying to give dog a bad name. That's why local government is being banded as the most corrupt level of government. We have other reasons why they are not able to do well. And once issues are properly addressed, then there will be no problem.
Well, Comrade Oyibo, thank you very much. You have taken the viewpoint that the NFIU guidelines derive from a desire to curb corruption in the local government tier, and that the corruption itself is inherent in that tier. But you said that there are other challenges. You may wish to speak to those other challenges that constrain local governments before we go to Professor Issa in Kaduna.
But the first challenge we have now is that of the payment of primary school teachers. Today, local government are responsible for the payment of teachers. Well, as you look at the revenue allocation, it's not in favor of local government. And if you are now saying that the funds should come directly to them, you are indirectly saying that local government should address their salary first and ignore teachers. That's a very serious issue. And there is also the need to review the revenue formula in favor of states and local government, so that they will have enough funds at their disposal. Another issue is that of making sure that the functions of local government as it were, in terms of their revenue sources, they should be left exclusively for them. And once that one is done, then there will be no problem. Above all, there's also the issue of election. The mode of election or selection of people coming to local government matters a lot. A situation where, if you look at the country today, various states, some don't even install a democratically elected local government, some are operating caretaker committee, and once that is done, you know what will happen. It will be a case of the master dictating for the people that he has put in place there. So the issue of election too, and how they are brought to local government is also important. And election to local government, we should attract people of qualities, people who have lived well, who have served in various capacity, who can represent their people. We call them councillors. A councillor is somebody who should be responsible enough to run a particular community. So these are the issues: the issue of election in local government, the issue of finances, the issue of revenue, the issue of the allocation that comes to the state, to the federation and local government. So there should be review of these things. If they are not done, they will going to have problems at local government level, no matter the situation that is put in place at the federal level.
Very interesting points that Comrade Oyibo is raising. Yeah, but as I said, well, let's go to Professor Isa in Kaduna Network Center. Professor Isa, of course, you listened to the other guests. Just as a reminder, the guidelines issued by the NFIU relate to the management of monies in possession of the local government authorities. What is your understanding of all of this? Is this another layer of control? Is this to win local governments off the financial controls of the state governments? Or is it to deal with corruption inherent in the local government system, as Comrade Oyibo implied?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak about local government autonomy and the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit. It's important to state that this is not the first attempt at monitoring revenue to local governments. For a very long time, at about, I think, 1989, the then federal government, the military government, came up with a document called the FM, the Financial Memorandum, and it has about 8 parts, and it's a document that deals with local government estimates, local government finances. It talks about local government accounts, treasury administration, stores management, and what have you, including how to dispose stores and manage the entire gamut of the local government financial system. However, after the then military administration left, that is, the military left and gave way to politics, like what happened in '79, the politicians felt that the military document was a federal might imposition on state government. So in large part, the document was not used when states were making laws for local government. Remember, Section 7 of the 1999 Constitution, in the second part, says, accordingly, the states shall make laws in terms of the structure, function, composition, establishment, finance of the local government before a local government can exist in a state. Now, the spirit and the letters of that was that the state were supposed to use this document and lay out the financial activities and the accounting procedures and what have you of the local government system. But most states rather pick aspect that fits them and then jettison the rest. And so this wasn't the first time. Now, in 2003, the then Obasanjo government established the 11-man technical committee under the late Esunupin Dayako, who passed on and then gave the mantle to late Liman Chiroma, who succeeded in submitting a report to Obasanjo before he passed out. And what was the output of that technical report? It led to a bill being passed by the executive to the National Assembly, and then it passed through the natural processes, and Obasanjo assented to that bill as Monetary Revenue Allocation to Local Government Act 2004. But because the Abia State government and Lagos State government, Lagos State, Abia State and other state took federal government to court in terms, to Supreme Court rather, in terms of revenue accruing to local government, the Supreme Court judgment of 2006 nullified that act of parliament and restore the status quo. Because the Constitution from Section 162, subsection 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 8, talks about revenue allocation to the local government, to the state. Now, because it wasn't the local governments that took the federal government to court, rather, it was the state that took the federal government to court. Therefore, the Supreme Court judgment restores status quo in terms of funds accruing to local government, but without that component of the law of monitoring. So the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit is a welcome development to a certain extent. And it is not limited to local government, to correct the impression. I read the act. It is also about monitoring insurgency financing or terrorism financing, and it's at all levels of institution. It's not limited to local government. It's not limited to state or federal. In fact, it even goes across private sector. So the law covers. However, the monster of local government autonomy is at the hinge of the fact that revenue accruing to local government from the federation account does not get down to the local government as it is expected. You know, we were part of the 11-man technical committee. I supervised or superintended some states. And if you look at Nolgate document, of all the totality of the funds that accrue to local government, only about 30% accrues to local government from the federation account. Now, states are indulged in coming with so-called joint projects, and of course, we know what elections are at the state level when they are controlled by state, and at the local government level, you know. So the executives of the local government, where they do exist, are executives that are handpicked in the guise of election. And so they sing the song, they go to allocation committee. In fact, recently I did a project for World Bank, and I went around selected states. And we discovered that there's FAC, that is Federation Allocation Accounts Committee, exists at state level. But the fund does not truly accrue, because state government creates so-called joint projects, which they fester and divest the resources accruing to local government, therefore killing and preventing the local government from doing their normal job. Now, this does not preclude the fact that there is no corruption in local government. There are, because local government themselves are supposed to have their areas of physical jurisdiction where they raise revenues, and they are supposed to use this revenue to do projects. But of all the 774 local government, not up to 2% of this local government generates substantial internally generated revenue, therefore negating the fundamentals of internally generated revenue as well. So this is a welcome development, that we have a financial intelligence unit monitoring revenue accruing to local government. And so it solves the problem only of FAC. Now, what is left is that the Auditor General of the state for local government must do his duty of bringing annual report to the State House of Assembly. Then, of course, at the local government level, there's what we call the Audit Alarm Committee. They're also supposed to rise up to the challenge and do their due diligence. Now, of course, what is also left is that the ICPC and the EFC have been doing a whole lot of job. There are a lot of local government chairmen now serving jail terms. And so they should rise up to the challenge and monitor what the local governments are doing with the funds so accrued from the federation account. Now, the other challenge which may likely exist is that the monitoring processes, because Financial Intelligence Unit just ensures that funds accruing to local government from the federation accounts gets to the local government. Now, there are ceilings placed on the local government. No local government from the intelligence unit guidelines so far released can expend on a daily basis more than 500,000. This has also been captured already in the financial memorandum of the local government. If you look at, you know, all the roles and responsibilities outlaid in the financial memorandum, they're all there, especially in paragraph 1 of the FM, which details financial rules and responsibilities. For example, every local government chairman has a ceiling, daily ceiling, and the heads of department, i.e. OCVs and the AIEs, Authority to Incur Expenditure, are all outlaid in the financial memorandum. So what we need to have to monitor properly is to ensure proper implementation of the financial memorandum at the local government level. And that would allay a lot of fears that if these funds so accrued to local government, they would also be misused. But I can assure you, if we monitor the local governments with the use of the financial memorandum, a lot of these problems will be solved. Now, for example, with the issue of Kaduna State, for example, 60% of revenue accruing to local government cannot be expended on overheads. They must go to capital projects. This is what the Kaduna State local government law outlays. So if we have such in the Financial Intelligence Unit's regulation, saying that of all the funds accruing to local government, 60% of it must go to capital projects, and then 40% can go for overhead, to be complemented by the internally generated revenue. That will solve a whole lot of problems. So we can now begin to say that if you have so amount, for example, 300 million accruing to a local government, of course, we want to see 60% of that going to capital projects in the local government. And therefore, this will solve a whole lot of the problems. So the Financial Intelligence Unit is a welcome development. It is good. It guarantees all the quest to ensure that the local government are empowered, particularly in the objective of the 1976 reform, as carried out in all the subsequent reforms, that they are completely attainable and achievable given the current endeavor of government.
Professor, it's an interesting analysis there, and he has been able to raise, Kingsley has raised a number of pertinent issues here, which of course is even, prompting me to believe that it's becoming a complex situation. And we've had the guidelines in the past, which of course is also being, replicated again, all over again, because from what he said, some of those guidelines had been existing, but the problem had been its implementation. And now we'll come to Honorable Kiana this time around. You've listened to Professor Issa doing that analysis, and he touched on very, very important issues. There was a time in this country when local governments are very powerful. They were embarking on projects like provision of rural water, rural electrification, and rural roads. What went wrong? You've gathered experience over the years, and would like you now to look at the NFIU unit, the Financial Intelligence Unit guidelines now. How would it, what would it portend for today's local government in terms of financial management?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, there is no excitement because just like the Prof had alluded to, the various phases and fasces of the same structured opportunities to monitor financial expenditure at the local government level had always been. We are trying to treat a sickness without the patient. We're assuming that there is some form of magical thing that this FI regulation will suddenly begin to sort out. It's not going to be possible. Number one, the structure with which this opportunity is supposed to attack doesn't exist. Because the fundamental thing that is wrong is that, just like the chairman of AMAC said, the people that are handling the matter as of today, no matter how you rigmarole around the subject matter, you are meeting people that are not there on their own accord or not on their own merit. So, number one, any state government today can take this law frontally and defeat it, because as at this moment, it is inconsistent with Section 162, 7, and 8, to the extent to which the Supreme Court judgment subsists today. What I mean by that is that the regulation does not secure autonomy of funding directly to the local government, as long as Section 162, 7, and 8 are concerned. Because it is automatic for funds going will still go to those institutions that, those provisions that the Constitution has already secured for the states. So until a formal amendment, two things should happen or can happen. If the effort to amend those 162 to up to 8 takes place, and all the state governments make this amendment and freeze the local government totally from any form of intervention, management, advisory roles from state government or federal government, we will have a smooth cell now to focus on the person who is going to execute the job. Then you can now monitor somebody who has a responsibility to execute. Number two, if the country today chooses to interpret the Constitution in the spirit that it was intended to, because even in the interpretation of the Constitution, the Supreme Court itself laid 12 rules. One of which is that you must not use constitutional means to attain unconstitutional gains. Meaning that the government, Nigerian government today, the state governments today, have used the opportunity they had to attain unconstitutional authority over the funds of the local government system, because they didn't take the spirit why the Constitution came to be in the first place into cognizance. So we must go back on board to look at how best to remove this fundamental institution structure of governance that is directly the reason for all the reforms that has eluded us since 1976 to implement fully. Otherwise, we will be dancing around the subject matter, because there is no way today that the FAC at the state level will sit without the FAC meeting dancing to the tune of what the state government has to do. That's the extent to which it is. And the easiest thing to do is to make a expenditure of 500,000 naira per day a limit. It will give you a document, it will give you an audited report that reflects all those things, and it will still not permit to the need and essence of why a local government system should come to exist in this country. So my own take is that while it is a wonderful initiative, the solution lies squarely and most easily now because there is a National Assembly that is willing. It has passed all the amendments that is needed to free the local government system from the state government. And all what we need to do is that, for God's sake, if the state and federal government have been performing, why are we not having enough water in this country for the rural development? If the state and federal government have been performing, why are we having issues with the health issues? Why are we having issues with the road? So the fundamental thing that is wrong is that we must go back to the drawing board and make sure that this tier of government that is set up to take care of the daily needs of a community that are organized to themselves, and force the state governments to make sure that the state houses for assembly endorses the law that will be passed by the National Assembly. So, because it's a national issue for us. It should not be at the understanding of a state government. He will spend a maximum of 8 years and leave. And the country continues to suffer. The federal government every day gives money to state government that they cannot even account for what they do with this money. And Mr. President has opportunity, I keep saying this, to address this federal government and see this as a national emergency for us to amend the Constitution and free the local government and give it full autonomy. Then we can face how the autonomy that has been given to local government can be best implemented, and people of your status can begin to be interested to go home and work for your people, because then you would have been working according to the rules that are set up to give you opportunity to deliver.
All right. Honorable Kiana, thank you very much. And gentlemen, just some points to clarify. The guidelines issued by the NFIU, the guidelines don't constitute an act, as it were. That's to say a law, but some persons would argue that would be subsidiary legislation. Now, there's also some clarification. What the NFIU has sought to do with the guidelines is a control mechanism. There's a story this morning on page 2 of the Nigerian Tribune. One of the headlines that we read on the front page, but with details on page 2, that the guidelines do not seek and have not in any way abrogated the states and local government joint account. And of course, in most of the states other than the Federal Capital Territory, it is the operation of that joint account, and perhaps also Kaduna, that you have the devil that this control mechanism is seeking to deal with. And the 500,000 naira ceiling as a guideline provided by NFIU has to do with cash transactions. The other guidelines, of course, mean that if you're going to make any payments, it has to be either by way of checks or by electronic transfer. So, back to the chairman of AMAC, Honorable Candido. This is a control mechanism, another layer of oversight, if you like, on local government finances. How effective is this likely to be, or how much of a hindrance is this likely to be to say, look, don't spend more than 500,000 naira cash for your transactions. Every other transaction, go by way of checks or go by way of electronic transfers?
I think Kingsley, let me once again appreciate this fact that the Financial Intelligence Unit is coming up with a policy that will, ensure the local governments are further strengthened. But the idea of maybe 500,000 naira daily that is supposed to be now the order of the day may not likely work, simply because of the exigencies of demands and stress of whatever our constituencies are almost asking. However, Mr. Kingsley, let me say that the body language of Mr. President in supporting the local government autonomy, you can now see, Nigerians will agree with me that some, how do I call them now? They have realized their past mistakes, having assumed the role of now senators. This some former governors who are now, members in the Senate and what other institutions there. They are now like beginning to see the day that the reality is dawning now, and therefore the best thing is to support Mr. President in this, in supporting the autonomous local councils. I want to say simply that unless there are mechanisms put in place to strengthen local government autonomy, and of course that will also guarantee that supervision and monitoring of whatever expenses the local governments are incurring are defined, whatever the Financial Intelligence Unit is coming up with will get weak at the end of the day, and not much result will be achieved, because you are not going to get exactly what you want out of it. And therefore, to be sincere with you and with Nigerians, I can see from every point where Nigerians, yes, are in support of this idea of monitoring, okay? But the overall objective will not be achieved, simply because if you ask me, for instance, in my local government, that all I need on daily basis, right, is to spend 500,000 naira. What if by constituents there is a demand of over 500,000 naira? What do? I should now wait until the next day. Okay, there are emergencies that could demand delivery of funds to the tune of over 2 million naira. And then you are asking me now to delay until the next day. What happens to the emergency there in the communities? And so these are areas that we also must have to look at it, and then allow the incoming National Assembly, particularly the Senate, to strengthen the local councils, so that we can have a better councils that will be dependent, and even as being dependent, also be monitored by correct institutions, not witch hunting institutions, correct institutions that will make sure that the system worked, wherein the people would be the better for it at the end of the day.
All right, thank you. In fact, the clarification made by Kingsley earlier on the guidelines of NFIU is quite germane here, because the main reason, behind establishing a joint account between state and local government is to ensure probity, is to ensure that development gets to the grassroots. Now, monies are shared on a monthly basis to state governments. The local government portion of that amount of money should be shared among the council areas in the states. Right, but the cause of the matter here is that there is delay, there is diversion, there is a non-remittance of monies to local government areas. In that sense, what is the NIFU guideline going to do? Where is the monitoring going to start from? Is it from the state government or council area government, which does not have autonomy to operate its finances? And I'd like to bring in Comrade Oyibo here, who is already in the system. Please, let us know whether the NFIU target of adequate monitoring of council area expenses, fall in line with the current administration of council areas. Where will this monitoring start? From the state or local government areas who are denied, the funds to run that tier of government?
Very much. In the first place, there is nothing wrong with sending the fund directly to local government. But the truth of the matter is that the joint local government account, as it's being managed today, varies from state to state. For instance, if you go to Delta, there is no doubt that there's a joint local government account. And that account has been properly managed over the years. The truth of the matter is that the fund that gets that account also received the 10% of the revenue coming from the state that goes to the local government. And when this money they are pulled together, the joint local government account committee sits down and the money is disbursed to the various local government. Take into consideration the fact that there are some basic financial responsibility which must be met, one of which is the primary school. Another one is the local government worker salary, and then capital project. The problem we have is that they catch all the volume that gets to each local government as of today is hardly enough to meet up with the responsibility of paying teachers, paying workers, let alone to come and do developmental projects. So even though the financial institution are taking a position, but I want to spend 500,000 naira, 500,000 in a day as your cash transaction, other ones will go by check. Like I said earlier, there are institutions on ground in each state, but that is not to say that some of these states or governors have not abused the process. But that is what we call is generalization. But there are some states that are doing very well, making sure that the money from the federal account to the joint local government account committee gets to the local government. And these monies are also used to resolve issues that borders on administration of local government, and also to carry out developmental projects. That I want to say here that much as I agree that the position has been put in place is in order, there is the need to ensure that funds are made available. Revenues that are due local government are collected by local government and they are used for development at local government level. And also, election. I listened to my brother there who talked of the issue of people which you adequately take care of local government. When people are elected, are properly sponsored by the people, the people will be in a position to monitor them and they will be responsible to such people. But when people are not properly elected and people are selected, their loyalty is to their master. So there is a need to also look at those areas. The financial situation is in order, or the financial institution is in order, but other areas have to be looked into. Particularly the mode of election and those that come to local government and the type of persons that are placed in place. After all, those who are local government chairmen today, they are also equally qualified to be governors. So we need to look at that properly. Once people are properly elected, even if they are constituent, there are people who ask them questions. That's going to be another form of checks, apart from the institutions that have been put in place.
All right. Comrade Oyibo, thank you very much. And gentlemen, thanks also. In the meantime, we're taking a short break. When we return, we'll take some more tweets. We'll take some tweets and then get back to get some more comments from the guests.
Why don't you people sell imported materials here? As beautiful as the shop is.
Auntie, buying foreign goods does not help our economy. Neither does it boost local production. And the good thing is Nigerian-made products are high quality. And to make Nigeria great again, that is why I only sell made in Nigeria products. Because change begins with me.
I'm convinced. Change begins with me too.
Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back. And I say good morning, Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Kirian, let's go very quickly now through the tweets that we have. Victor Onoyem tweets. It says the Minister of Finance should recommence the old idea of publishing financial allocation to states and local governments to expose governors who receive billions monthly but give the impression that Buhari is the problem. Governors are the problems of this country. Now, they refuse to conduct local government elections, seize local government allocations. The EFCC should wade into the activities of governors.
And from Omobola Babs, good topic for discussion. It's unfortunate we practice pseudo-federalism in this part of the world. The local government has always been known to be the closest to the grassroots. Whatever is done here has direct impact on lives of the people. But sadly, it's more of state appendage.
Now, this is coming from Isidore Uzuatu. I'm not sure. It says, let this not end like our independence federalist constitution subsumed by a better presidential one. I'm not quite sure what that entails, but your comment is noted. Festus Akimboyewa has the next tweet. It says, recent NFIU guidelines for local governments and the backing by the Senate are timely and should be applauded. It will reinforce the autonomy of our local government system.
And from Law Alpha C, it requires a lot of political will and implementation of legal framework as enshrined in the Constitution to ensure total autonomy of local government councils.
Edem Akman, if the local government in Nigeria is autonomous, there will be rapid development.
Sani Michael Omakoji, most governors have turned local governments to their personal microfinance banks, and that's the reason why some of the governors never allows council area election to hold. Instead, they appoint administrators.
Cecilia Okoroma, beyond real progress that will emanate from local government's financial control, chairmen will not be used by governors as stooges to win elections.
All right, Danladi Ndaebo, NFIU to free up local government funds and also monitor financial management at the grassroots is heartwarming. Its recent directive will make the third tier of government really autonomous and not be beholden to state governors. I hope it got happened directly because it has not really given them autonomy.
That's right, Karian. Now, Jimmy T. Martins, the guidelines, he tweets are a welcome development. And I must recommend all agencies involved in making sure that this works. And they should also put in place things to ensure that the chairman don't withdraw the monies back to the governors due to fear and intimidation from the governors. Well, those are the tweets that we have. Yes. I would like us to return to Professor Mohammed Issa in our Kaduna Network studios. Professor Issa, there are two issues, and if you could respond as briefly as you could the circumstance, that would be appreciated. One, Comrade Oyibo in our Benin Network Center draws attention to pre-existing mechanisms of control, monitoring and control at the local government levels. For instance, the Auditor General's Office for Local Governments, the Directorate for Local Governments in the respective Ministry of Local Government, usually at the state level, under the control or direction of a commissioner who is in charge of local government, and some will say chieftaincy affairs. So those pre-existing mechanisms, what has happened to them in terms of monitoring and control of local governments, in particular Auditor General? If there's been a failure, so what do we do? Now, the other leg has to do with the following. You referenced the Supreme Court decision of 2004. Some scholars would argue that perhaps what we are dealing with has to do with the cardinal provision in Section 7 of the Constitution that empowers state governments, and in this case, state houses of assemblies, to make laws for their own local government. And we don't expect uniform laws. Are you going to have the laws coming down from the federal level? At the time, you are also arguing for true federalism. How can we ensure that those laws that are made are consistent with the other provisions of the Constitution, namely to ensure the efficacy of the local government system, in particular if you were to reference the fourth schedule of the Constitution, and ensure that the local governments do not remain under the control of state governments and state governors as we have seen over the years?
Thank you very much. first I'll respond to the first part of the question in this directive. You see, it's very important to state that as between 1988, 89 to 1992, when local government enjoyed the highest level of autonomy in the history of local governance in Nigeria, one of the things that was absent was the absence of the Ministry for Local Government. I'll be radical about this. If we want to give local government autonomy, we must cancel the Ministry for Local Government, because it is the umbilical cord of the state government through which local government are hamstrung and prevented by the governors from performing their function. Instead, what should be retained from the local Ministry for Local Government is the Directorate of Inspection. And the Directorate should be subsumed as a Directorate under the office of the Governor or the office of the Deputy Governor, as the case may be. That was what was obtainable under the then military administration when local government enjoyed the highest level of autonomy. Now, coming to the question, the issue of the Auditor General for Local Government. Now, the Auditor General for Local Government are really funded. From the recent World Bank mapping that we conducted across Nigeria and some selected states, we discovered that the Office of the Auditor General for Local Government is underfunded, understaffed, and then not provided with adequate materials to go in to do pre-tests, on-the-spot tests, and very importantly, post-auditing. Now, this post-auditing of auditing what has been expended is what is important. The pre-test, on-the-spot test, and audit, or the post-audit of what has been expended, which is what will create, which will expose a whole lot of the gamut of mismanagement or whatever takes place, is what is absent. Now, in large part, what this remains is that the Office of Auditor General for Local Government requires a lot of staff, a lot of funding, and a lot of, working material. I visited some Office of Auditor General for Local Government late last year, and what I saw working for the World Bank is a sham. They can't work. They cannot perform because they're not even hardly recognized in the scheme of administrative setup of, of state structure. Now, the Office of Auditor General for Local Government must be empowered to perform their function as required by law. And they have been there for a very long time. And what needs to be done is to strengthen their capacity and empower them to do. And we've seen in history, for example, between 2000 and 2003, 2005, there was an Auditor General's report for local government which led to the arrest and detention of 11 local government chairmen in Kaduna State, for example. And it has led to the detention and arrest and even, imprisonment of some local government chairmen because they couldn't account for receipt of money. Now, let's come back to the other tripod of the question, which is very fundamental. First, let's understand that autonomy means a whole lot of things. And I was opportune to speak to SSGS of the Federation at a retreat organized by the Office of the Secretary to the Federal Government in December 2017 at the State House in Villa. Now, it's very important to understand that we keep emphasizing autonomy from the financial dimension. There's political autonomy, there's administrative autonomy, there's funding autonomy, there's financial autonomy, and there are structural autonomy. Now, we need to conceptualize and internalize this very dimension of local government autonomy. And in large part, we tend to emphasize just the financial autonomy, which is not just it. So what the Financial Intelligence Unit seeks to do, and which is the misperception here, we confuse these things completely. There is the issue of transfer, funds transfer from federation account. And the federal government, as the owners of dispensing funds from the federation account to all units of government, has a right to know what is being done with these funds. For example, nobody's talking about the money generated by the local government internally. Nobody's looking at that. Nobody's talking about that in terms of receipts and expenditure. And this is where I disagree with the chairman of AMAC. There are several things involved. The intelligence unit, guidelines focuses on transfer and then operations of these funds. So that is why they want to monitor what is transfer through the FAC, the joint account to the local government. So if the money comes from federation account, they monitor from transfers to the local government. So it's been transferred, but it is being hijacked, stolen, raped, serially, financially raped at the level of FAC. This is what is happening. So projects, and it's across the state. I'm sorry, my chairman, Local Government Service Commission says one state is better. Yes, but before your administration came in, what was the picture before the current administration? And what will be the picture after you have left office? So we have seen series of serial rape of the FAC allocation committee at the state level at various epochs in the history of all the states. They hijack these funds and use it for state activities or create so-called